kind of my journey to my diagnosis, I would say. I've been in and out of therapy since I was about 11 years old. I've had depression, anxiety, OCD diagnosis, PTSD, but none of them ever felt right. They didn't feel like they fully covered the spectrum of what I was going through. And so actually it came by me as a fluke. One day I was in a library and I was perusing the psych section, and I saw a book, and it was called Survival Guide to Borderline Personality Disorder. And I'd never heard of it, and something drew me to it. I was like, I want to read this. So I sat down in the aisle, and I opened it, and I read the checklist, and I bawled my eyes out. And I was like, this makes so much sense. And it just connected to the things that didn't fit into my diagnoses before. You know, it's like, I'm depressed, but I also have this, I'm this, so that was really, really incredible. And so I called my parents, and they were kind of, they were like, I don't know. But then I got home, made an appointment with a DBT counselor or a psychiatrist, and I got my diagnosis. And yeah, it really made things make a lot of sense for me. Yeah. Symptoms, they were pretty clear to me once I started realizing that they were part of the disorder. Before, I just thought that I was kind of a bad person, or that I was destined to have a life of being misunderstood and relationships problems. But when I started DBT, I kind of realized that for me, a couple big ones were impulsivity. When I was a teenager, I had a lot of problems with reckless spending. I would take my parents' debit card and just go crazy with it. And it was never about getting stuff. It was just that feeling of, it was just, I needed to feel something. I needed to get something. I needed anything to lift my mood a little bit. I would drive my car when I shouldn't be driving my car. I picked up and moved to BC a day after deciding I was going to. Moving from friends to boyfriends, never, I call myself a chameleon. I really never know who I was, and sometimes I think I don't know who I am. One day I would be the punk girl skateboarding, one day I would be the hippie going to yoga, I would be the writer, I would be the artist, I would be whoever I was around. That's who I wanted to be. But at the time, I remember feeling like a fake. And I remember feeling that these people were gonna look at me and say, she's a fake, she shouldn't be here. And so that really ate heavily at me. The aspect of fear of abandonment was massive for me, especially it played out in relationships. When I was with my boyfriend, there was times when one day he had to go to work, and something in me, I thought, he's never going to come back, and I attempted suicide just to get him to stay home. And that happened a couple times, and whether I actually did it or not, I would say, I'm going to kill myself, you can't leave right now. And that didn't come from a place from a bad place. Because that's what it is for me. I didn't know how to show what I was feeling properly. So I just explode, and I did the only thing. I said, okay, I want this person to stay. The only way I know how is through extreme grand gestures. Who's gonna say no to someone saying they're gonna kill themselves, So it was the impulsivity, and it was the intense fear. I lived in constant fear of losing somebody, losing him. And those were the ones that definitely played out the strongest for me. A typical bad day before I realized what I was dealing with and before I sought help. I always say I can't believe I've survived the past 10 years, because every day I never knew if I was going to wake up and be able to get through that day. My emotions were just so severe. My sadness so severe it would wake me up in the middle of the night. My dad used to always say, I used to have a lot of fits. You imagine when I say the word fit, a toddler, but I would have tantrums, and they wouldn't be for a specific end. I didn't want a candy bar. It was just my emotions had boiled so hot up inside of me that I had to explode. And I would be, this is me at 19, 20, you know, on my bed, screaming, crying, hitting my head, you know, screaming, I need help, please somebody help me. And it's true, I needed help, but I didn't know what I needed. And I was always so unhappy. And it was difficult because then I would have a good day the next day, or I would be fine in an hour. And people would say, oh, you're great. And then the next day when I'm bad again, it's like, but you were just so good yesterday. And it was so hard to get people to understand that not only was I not doing this for attention, because that's a big thing, you know, I don't want this kind of attention. But at the same time, I did need attention. I needed someone to pay attention to me, and because there was clearly something wrong. But, you know, a bad day, it was just like, they came so much more often than the good days. And every bad day I had, I wasn't sure I was going to survive. I didn't know how. That's why I turned to substance abuse. And, you know, that's why I turned to maladaptive behaviors and impulsivity, because if I needed those things. I needed to feel either low or high. I needed to feel something because I needed to be regulated. And I don't know how without DBT, I would have still been doing those things. And yeah, it was hell. Like, it really was hell. There was obviously the tiny trigger. But there was usually never a big thing. Nobody's insulting me. It could have been, I was really hot. I was really hot and I was getting frustrated in my room, and then I dropped something. And then all of a sudden, I'm like crying and screaming and hitting my head, because although, yeah, that wasn't a big deal, but it just set something off in me, and I couldn't handle feeling uncomfortable, or especially if someone said something to me like, that hinted at abandonment. Like, if I was with somebody and they maybe, or say if I asked somebody to hang out and I'm busy right now, totally normal answer, but to me that was them saying, I don't want to see you, I want to do anything else but see you, and I'm probably never going to see you again. And so I remember, you know, I was crying to my mom one day because I said, oh, you know, this so-and-so told me he couldn't hang out tonight. And you seem so upset. When did you meet him? And I said, oh, I met him last week. And she couldn't believe how upset I was. But, you know, it wasn't about the person in particular. It's just, it was so hard for me to hear an answer that I wasn't expecting. And I just exploded, and I felt so hurt and ashamed, and all these things coming in my head from the littlest spark. I'm pretty sure a lot of what I'm dealing with, the BPD and the PTSD, it stems from my childhood abuse and trauma. But before that, I remember, as far as I can remember, when I was very, very young, I was a happy kid, you know. But as early as I was making memories, my parents told me, and I remember having, say if I was in a store and I couldn't have something, I was never spoiled, we never had a lot, but just hearing no, there was times when security in the store had to come in because I was so upset, and then at that point I didn't even remember what I was upset about. It's just when something set me off and I was up here, it took a village to get me down here. You know, I was always upset as a kid. I was so sensitive. It was very hard for me to make friends, and I always remembered feeling like something was wrong, especially with me and my family, but I didn't know what. I was a child, and yeah, I feel like now that I have my diagnosis, it's so much easier for me to look back on, oh, that time in the hotel, okay, that makes sense. You know, I wasn't just being a bad kid. I wasn't a troubled teenager. There was something seriously wrong. A lot of my regulation came from the fact that no one would listen to me. And especially because it's a sibling, people think, oh, you know, sibling rivalry, it's, you know, but I was the kid that I called Children's Aid when I was 7. I called the police constantly. I said, I need help, something's wrong, but no one would listen to me. And I think that's where I developed a distrust, and I feel like people lie to me, and no one's going to help me if they say they are, because from such a young age they didn't help me. And there was a definite correlation between I would have the abuse and then an episode, and my brain would just be on fire for a couple days, and I couldn't get it back down because it was so constant that I never had the recovery period. It was basically 10 years of highs. And so my brain is now at 20 kind of starting to, the dust is starting to settle, which, yeah, it's really hard. So I can't speak for everybody, but I know for myself it was such a feeling of not having control and hopelessness. Hopelessness is huge for me, and I think it's huge for a lot of people I've spoken to that suffer from the same diagnosis, because we were not given the basic skills to cope with emotions that we face every day. So the littlest problem, it runs our lives. We are just constantly on fire, constantly waiting, constantly. So for me, I'm getting over a lot of substance abuse, alcoholism, and for me it was, my doctor prescribed me Ativan, which is just it's a drug, and the way it was described to me was, you take this pill, you pop it, and you feel great. And I was like, awesome. So I started taking it as needed, and then I needed it more and more. And then it got to the point where any time that I felt anything getting me up here, I wanted to be brought down. So I was popping them like M&Ms. And I needed, for me, because I was never into drugs that made you up, I was always downing, so I needed to be brought down because my mind was always on 100, my feelings, my skin was always crawling, so I needed to be brought down. I needed to just not think for a while because I was always thinking so much. And it was really, to me, self-harm isn't just a razor and a wrist. It shows itself in so many different ways. I see that now, my behavior of constantly needing male companionship, that was self-harming because I couldn't be alone, and I couldn't be alone with my thoughts. I couldn't sleep alone. Spending, all of that was self-harming. And the reason I did it was because I needed to feel something or I needed to feel nothing. And because people with BPD, we feel so much and we feel things so heavily that it's really nice to have a second where it's like, oh, okay, I have, and those moments are so rare to us. So anything I could get my hands on that worked to bring me down even for a second, that's why I did it. To people that don't have BPD symptoms, I would like to ask two things of you: that you treat us like we deserve to be treated, which is normal human beings just like you. We have feelings, we overreact just like you do, we get sad just like you do, and our feelings are valid no matter what label we might have. But on the other side of that, I would like you to understand that we do have special needs, and we are highly sensitive, and we have a disease just like somebody who has a physical disease that would be accommodated to, and there needs to be more awareness, especially since BPD is such an unknown diagnosis. You need to understand that there are certain things that we cannot handle from person to person, and that just in doing your research, having a compassionate mindset, and being open-minded, you could make a huge difference in our lives. And yeah. If I was to be speaking to somebody who has BPD symptoms, maybe even a younger version of myself who doesn't understand why she's like this way, I just want you to know that please keep going. There is hope. I have been at the lowest of the low, sitting in the well, not wanting to get out. I've had a lot of odds against me, and I'm sure you do too, but I need you to understand that for all the ugly and for all the hardships, there is so much beauty and there is so much love, and there are people, and I'm sitting in a room with them, that will make their lives out to helping you. And you shouldn't be ashamed of who you are. This isn't something you asked for. You didn't cause all your problems, but it is in you to fix them, and I know you can. A lot of people are born as princesses and princes, and they have things handed to them. And they'll have their trials and troubles, but not like we've had to go through. But guess what? We are warrior princes and princesses. We had to fight for the right to be alive right now, and fought and fought and fought we have, and we deserve to be here. Because every day is a victory that we get through what's going on in our minds and what's going on outside. And that alone is enough to say, I don't want to end this life. I deserve to be here. I fought to be here. I earned this, you earned this, and we are so special. And someday soon, you won't have to begin every sentence with a question. But for right now, the world is starting to change, and it's for our benefit. And the best thing you can do is wear your scars and wear what you've been through, because you are a warrior and you have survived. And that is the most beautiful thing that anyone can say about themselves.